All right, all right. What's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to another installment of the Beer Flow Podcast. This is your boy Greg. On behalf of myself, Einstein to the back, real deal. Thank you so much for the love and support. And let's get into it. So, speaking of support, I was at my day gig not too long ago. And yes, I have a day gig. And I ran into one of my boys, Jay. I've known Jay since way back when. And just started chopping it up with him, started talking. And I kind of asked him, I was like, hey, you heard about the podcast? He said, oh, yeah, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Did you download it? Check it out. You know that it's on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, and there's also the website. And he's like, yeah. But you know what? In all honesty, I really only listen to the B-sides. All right. That being said, for Jay and all you other hip-hop heads out there, this is for you. This is a B-side episode. And for this B-side episode, something came up and something happened that I've never seen in hip-hop before. And I'm sure it's happened before, but I've never heard of it. And I've definitely never seen it from an artist that has been this established. So in 2015, there was a Kickstarter plan that was started, or a Kickstarter fund that was started by the group De La Soul. And what they were campaigning for was help from their friends and fans. They were going to create a new album, and they had a goal in mind. And with this money, they were going to create their new album, and they were going to release it. Literally within 10 hours of them putting up the information for their Kickstarter, they reached their goal. It literally only took 10 hours. They had a goal of $110,000, and they reached it within 10 hours. And it's just crazy. So with that, what happened this week was that album got released. Now, the album is called And the Anonymous Nobody. And I've got to tell you, folks, this album is incredible. Now, I mean, I'm a huge De La Soul fan, and by no stretch of the imagination, this album did not disappoint. What made this great was that they stayed true to themselves. It is an old school, let's not forget, true school style of rhyme. And what makes it cool is that there's actually a rhyme pattern in their lyrics, and the rhyme pattern actually matches up. There's a pattern to it that makes sense, has meaning, and more importantly, it has depth. And there are like levels of depth and meaning behind all of their lyrics. And to me, that's what makes De La Soul just absolutely incredible. And just musically, this album is nuts. Let's get into a little bit of description of this album. Okay, so for me, this was basically where I thought way back when, back when hip hop was new, when rap music was kind of just getting its legs. This is exactly how I would have imagined hip hop to sound years and years, decades later. This album really personifies that. I mean, there's huge jazz influence. There's, wait for it, real music. There's real strings. There's melody. There's spoken word poetry into it. I mean, all of that is incorporated into this album. And let's not be fooled. They still have a knack for that, like, real old school boom bap style of rap. So, what is boom bap? It's the drums, just boom, boom. They have that. And not only do they have it, it is well represented. It is just awesome. They do have, a bunch of cameos on there. I mean, Snoop's on there. I mean, come on. You're not going to ever really go wrong with Snoop. Jill Scott's on it. Just this album is just nuts. And like, in all honesty, this whole big cornucopia of like melody and strings and all this is nothing new for De La Soul. Now, I mean, I know that a lot of you remember the name De La Soul. You remember the group and everything. And I mean, for the rappers, Posthumous, Dave, Maceo, or as a lot of people know them, Plug 1, Plug 2, and Plug 3. I mean, they've been doing this for years, literally decades. So, I mean, if you go back to their first album, back in 1989, their first album, 3 Feet High and Rising, I mean, it's a classic. It is a straight up classic. And it's a classic amongst hip hoppers. It's a classic amongst music writers. And then for fans of great music, that album, it's incredible. It's great. It's one of those, it's catchy. It's just everything that hip hop really had never really seen before. I know, like, for the most part, when people think of De La Soul, they probably think of what's probably to date, it's their most popular song. But Me, Myself, and I, that song comes from that album. But for me personally, one of my favorite hip hop songs of all time is on that album, the song Buddy. The remix, it came out years later, about a year later or so. But I mean, that album is just great. It's just quirky and full of, crazy metaphors, and nobody knew what the hell they were saying. A lot of people, for a lot of people, that was a turnoff. They're like, oh, I don't get it. And I think that's really what makes music. It's not for everyone. Not everyone loves certain groups. Whereas you go to the flip side of that, the B side, get it? There are people that are absolutely just ravenous for it. They just get it, and it becomes their favorite song, album, artist, whatever. So then you create this huge, loyal, dedicated fan base, and they did that. And a lot of their actual physical appearance it looked gimmicky and shticky, where they're hippies. They even mentioned it in a lyric later on in the career. They were on the Arsenio Hall show, and as they were getting introduced, Arsenio Hall called them the hippies of hip hop. And, of course, they took mental note of that, and then they actually put pen to paper. Okay, so for their second album, like I said, they did take note of that, and they kind of inadvertently tried to intentionally reinvented themselves to a degree. I mean, with the whole hippie persona, they wanted to kill it. They wanted to get rid of it, and they really took this genius way of doing it by naming their second album De La Soul is Dead. And I mean, I guess you could say it was sort of a concept album. The album itself kind of takes you on this journey of, it's told through the eyes of this kid, and he has a De La Soul tape, and the whole album is about this journey of finding and kind of defending quality hip hop. And at the same time, they were kind of dissing some of their contemporaries at that time. So, I mean, it sounds familiar as far as modern day hip hop is concerned. And I mean, they were talking about this back in 91. So, I mean, if you think about it, somebody with that kind of foresight, they're definitely working on a level of genius that others may understand and get. And when you do, it's just greatly appreciated. All right, so then 93 rolls around, and they drop what is, it just really, I mean, it was just working on so many different levels. The theme of that whole Balloon Mind State album was, we might blow up, but we won't go pop. And I mean, if you think about it, that's just kind of an incredible statement, especially for a hip hopper. I mean, back then, selling out, it was bad. Don't sell out, never sell out, never sell out. And they did that. They blew up in the sense of their lyrics were just, they were just so much better. They were just better rappers, better rhymers than everyone. Their production was incredible. Prince Paul, the magic genius behind those first two albums, I don't know. I mean, he was still there, but I mean, not as much in the forefront as the first two albums, where there was a lot of skits and things like that in the first two albums. But this third album, it took on this whole new musical level. That, yeah, they had fun little punchlines, and they had great rhymes, and they had big time jazz. There was all kinds of jazz on this album, and it was great. And to me, I think the musicality really started to show through that, whereas in like the first two albums, and especially the first album was just filled with samples and funny little jokes. De La Soul, the second album, De La Soul's Dead, they were just really just sticking with that concept and just killing that old persona. And this one, they just kind of just blew up that whole image and just really came out with this musicality that wasn't really seen from a lot of hip hoppers that were kind of going through the whole sample catalog, and where other rappers back then, they were literally relying on really cool hooks. Hopefully they can find that nice jazz break or whatever. And they were just creating these huge, like audio masterpieces of different ear visuals, I guess. I mean, I can't describe it. You really just have to listen to Balloon Mind State from beginning to end to really kind of get the feeling of what I'm trying to convey here. And then 3 years later, they released their album Stakes is High, and it was good. I mean, it's a really good album. They have some really great tracks on there. But I think, well, one of the great things about it was that it really held true to their standard of, great rhymes, great lyrics, depth, levels of, consciousness were really starting to come to the forefront. They'd always been conscious rappers. I mean, they were they were the core part of the native tongues back in the day, which, consisted of De La Soul, Jungle Brothers, A Tribe Called Quest, Queen Latifah, and Moni Love. They were on that, the native tongues wore that. For one, they wore dashikis and things like that, and they were very conscious. But, fast forward to the Stakes is High album, without being, in dashikis, they were definitely very, very conscious. And this album really kind of showed what being conscious without beating somebody over the head was like. So, I mean, it's a great album. Definitely worth checking out. There's some really, really great standout tracks out there on that album. And then it all started changing. Music was changing. The world was changing. The internet was coming to the forefront. And the 2000s happened. And then that's when things got a little funky. And not in a good way. I mean, it was the beginning of the 2000s, and music was nuts back then. I mean, if you think about it, what was ruling in music back then? I mean, think about it. 2000, Faith Hill, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and of course, how could I forget? Of course, America's favorite, Creed. These guys were ruling the music world. It's almost like there was no place for De La Soul. And unfortunately, that was not the best time for them to come out and release and have the idea to release a 3-part concept album. So, yeah, I know. Crazy. All right, so with the 3-album concept album, what the plan was, it was to drop one album. Oh, they were gonna drop a trilogy, and they were gonna release an album every year for 3 years. And what sucked was they actually only released 2 of those 3 albums. The first one was Art Official Intelligence Mosaic Thump. That was the first one, and it was cool. I mean, and then a year later, they released AOI, which was the acronym for Art Official Intelligence Bionics. Now, fortunately / unfortunately, those were truly for De La Soul fans. They weren't, I mean, by then the masses kind of just given up on them or forgotten about them. The only thing they remember from De La Soul is, oh, Me, Myself, and I. Yeah, okay, yeah, that was great. But I mean, I'm not going to say, I mean, if you're putting something out there, you're more than likely putting out your heart and soul. I mean, I think that's probably why I think De La Soul speaks to me, because I see what they're doing. I get it. And just about any artist, they're putting their heart and soul into it. And when it's not received by the masses, I mean, it just kind of sucks. I mean, I wouldn't ever shit on anyone and say, oh, it was a failure. Well, it might not have been a, huge dynamic selling album. I mean, if you work in the financial department or marketing department for a record company, yeah, you can say it was a marketing failure, but De La Soul was so much more than that. They knew they weren't going to have that huge commercial success, and that's fine. That was kind of, I don't want to say it was their mantra, because I mean, I don't know what their actual mind state was, but listening to their music, you knew exactly that this was for the fans that got them, that understood it. And they put out quality. They put out really, really, really great records, great songs. There were some really good tracks on those two albums, the Mosaic Dump and Bionics. Definitely worth checking out. I mean, and that's another great thing, is that they always, every album they release, they've always got really good, really just awesome people to collaborate with. Ghostface is on one of the songs. I believe there was a song with Method Man on the Bionics album. I mean, just definitely, if you get a chance, check it out. They're definitely worth checking out. So, of course, they were definitely relevant. So then, like in 2004, they released the album Grind Date. And it's a great album. Definitely a great album. It's, it didn't receive that commercial success that, a lot of rappers were getting. But, like I said, it was like the early 2000s. Everything was jiggy. Everything was shiny suits. God, it was hard to say. It was all puffy and mace and, all that. That just wasn't De La Soul. That wasn't them. They were beyond that. And it was just kind of weird, because fans like myself, they were like, okay, hey, yeah, there's this new album, this new De La album, where like the rest of the world's like, so? It's like, wow. And so for a while, I was kind of like, well, I guess, is that it? I mean, I'd seen some of my favorite rappers and rap groups just stop making music, stop making records, and it's fine, I guess. I mean, in the sense that, time moves on and music changes, the world changes. But I mean, they were definitely still there. They were still relevant. I mean, they were still touring. They got together with a bunch of other, it wasn't like the old school tour, but it was really, okay, so if you may have heard there was a hip hop tour that was called Rock the Bells. De La Soul was on that tour, and it was great. And every year for the past few years, they've had these Rock the Bell tours where they throw, a couple newer rappers, but it's more of those old school / true school hip hop acts. And De La Soul was one of them. And, they did a lot of side projects. There was this side project where Plug 1 and Plug 2, I forgot the name of it, but they said that they weren't them, they were somebody else, and they would refer to them as those guys on the albums. I mean, they were still in the eye, they were still in the ear of people. They had huge success with the group Gorillaz. If you remember that song, Feels Good Inc., there were rappers on there. That was De La Soul. I mean, everyone who knows De La Soul knew that was them. Some people who, like the wifey, she's a little bit younger than me, and she knows that song. She loves that album. She loves that song. I'm sure she has no clue that De La Soul was on there, but they were. I mean, hell, they were in the. Follow me here. I don't know if anyone remembers the Parappa the Rapper video game. Yeah, De La Soul was on there. They were on the soundtrack for that video game. So I mean, they were there, and now we're here. 14 years later, they finally released another album. And it's just kind of crazy because, the fact that this album was done through Kickstarter and everything, it really felt like they made this album for true fans because it was, in part, it was made by true fans. And I mean, I was one of those people that would, every week, I would go on iTunes and look, are they released yet? No. For years, you could not, I mean, to this day, there's hardly, if you can't go to iTunes and find any old De La Soul albums. They're just not there. You couldn't find them. And because, those albums weren't really ready available to the masses through through iTunes or anything like that, it's almost like that music was lost. But then if you were a part of their, I guess, I don't want to say fan club, but if you went to their website, it was kind of cool because they would sit there on the De La Soul website, they would release a track. Like, oh, we did this song with Nas, check it out. And they would just release it for free and you can download it. It's like, oh, that's awesome. They released a song with Chuck D and it was, same kind of deal. It was awesome and it was, it was cool. Oh, thanks. Thanks, De La, you're the best. Thanks for giving us the free song. Well, one day they made this announcement and they were saying that they were going to release through their website. Like if you signed up for the email or put on their newsletter, they would send you a time and a day and you could download all of their previous albums for free. And it was freaking crazy. I remember I literally stopped everything and, I told the wife, it was like, hey, just give me a couple hours. I'm going to be doing this. I don't know how long it's going to take. Well, it was great. I was able to get all their old albums and download them for free. They even threw in a couple remix albums and just, it was incredible. It was so good. And now this, I think this is why I'm truly excited about this new album. Because like I said, it was made by the fans, for the fans. And I just can't say enough about this group and how much I appreciate and love the music they've put out. And like I said, it's not for everyone, but I think if you trust me, if you trust my opinion as far as music is concerned, you'll dig it. If you love hip hop and if you already know. If you love hip hop, you already know. If you're willing to try new music and you've got an open ear, definitely check this album out. And what's funny and ironic is that, like I said, because the people were involved, the fans were involved. Like I said, it sounds like it's for the fans, and now it's everywhere. It's on iTunes. Just for funsies, I actually downloaded it off of Spotify. As a matter of fact, I was actually on Facebook, and there was a video. A fan of De La Soul on their Facebook page. What they were doing was they were actually. Somebody was videoing them signing CDs that they were going to send out. They were hands. It was really, really awesome. So, I mean, I'm not even a part of this, and I'm so proud of what they've done with this album. Please, please, please check it out. It's called And the Anonymous Nobody by De La Soul. That is our B-side for this week. There is no jam of the week. What I want you to do, find your own jam of the week for this week. Go to anyone. I mean, I don't know how you're going to do it. You got to find a way to do it. If you got to go to a record store, if they still have those, I know they have like Amoeba, Rasputin out here in the Bay Area in California. Look for some old De La Soul CDs, vinyl, whatever. The new album, And the Anonymous Nobody. Get it. Listen to it. I promise you'll love it. Find your own jam of the week this week. Pick any track. I can sit there and tell you some of my favorite standout tracks. Like I said, Buddy, Potholes in My Lawn, Saturdays. Oh, it's a great song. That is a great song. God, just so many. Break of Dawn. I gotta stop. I'll be doing this all night. So please go check it out. So that being said, the is well worth the wait. And for our 15 for 30, I have incorporated a special beer for this week's 15 for 12. Why do I always keep saying 15 for 30? Maybe it's because I wish that my glass was 30 ounces and it was full of beer. No. 15 for 12. This week is a special one. So hold on a sec. All right, everybody. 15 for 12. And in this case, it's actually 15 for 22. Deuce, deuce. I've been sipping on this throughout the recording of this episode. And we here at the Beer Flow, we are helpers. Or at least we try to be. One thing we also try to do is we also try to work on levels. So because it has been 14 years since the last studio album, I guess you can say, for De La Soul, it's been 14 years between albums. Keeping that in mind, this week's 15 for 12 is the 20th anniversary Stone beer. Okay, so let me break that down for a second. Every year, Stone has their anniversary release, and it's around the same time, around the end of summer. And this being Stone's actual 20th year in existence, they have made the Citricato IPA. Now, it's a double IPA. It is a nice, healthy 9% ABV. And in the glass, it is a nice dark amber color. Super floral, but more than anything, super fruity on the nose. And it's also very citricy, very citrus. Get citrus notes on the nose. That is because they use the Citra hops. Now, the Citra hops, they're basically going to give you more of a floral, citric flavor and taste to the beer. So that's why you're getting that nice little bitterness, but you're also going to get that nice, almost like, I don't want to say tart, like almost like definitely citric, lemony, tangerine type of taste and aroma. But, oh man, this is good. So good. And, every year for the Stone anniversary, they usually do a different style or, whatever. This is a double IPA, so tread lightly. And that's it. That's because it is their anniversary release, it's limited. So if you see it, definitely pick it up. I know I started seeing people on Instagram and things like that starting to hold up their bottles, and it's great. If you can find it, definitely pick it up. Totally worth it. Great beer. Nothing. It's nice and hoppy. That bitterness is there, but in a very, very nice, comforting, warm way that Stone does it. I've always said, like, even their Ruination's one of the first big IPAs I've had, and I just remember when I described it, I was like, it's like drinking the feeling of being in a warm blanket. It's just so good. And the 20th anniversary Staccato does not disappoint. It totally delivers on that same level, but just heightened. Just really, really good stuff. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening in, tuning in. Please check us out again on iTunes. Go on there, give us a review, give us a rating. We would love to hear your feedback. We are also on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, and check out the website, thebeerflow.com. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. And once again, Untapped. Great. I love it. We're every week getting more and more people. Like I said, Untapped is this fun little app where every time you try a beer, you kind of rate it, give it your own rating. You can give it a description. You can take pictures. You can check out breweries around. We have an account, and you can see what we're drinking as well. We're rating beers that may not be on the podcast, but we're definitely rating beers. You can have friend requests us. We'll follow you. We don't turn anyone away. We'd love to see what you guys are drinking. So that's on Untapped, and all of them are at the Beer Flow. Thank you once again for the love and support. Truly appreciate it. Like I said, we've got some big things coming up. God, I can't even. I'm excited. I can't tell you just yet. trust me, we got some big, big things coming up. So from everyone here at the Beer Flow, Einstein, Real Deal, myself, Greg, thank you so much. We have no Jam of the Week. You guys go find your own Jam of the Week from De La Soul. I promise you, they will not let you down. And just remember here at the Beer Flow, our motto, good things truly come to those who wait, especially when there's love behind it. From all of us here at the Beer Flow, thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. Peace.